Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Adli bin Nasir, and this is our first slide, which is the introduction of carbon cycle. So what is a carbon cycle? Carbon cycle is a continuous movement of carbon through the earth, atmosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere. Carbon is extremely important because it is the basic building block of life. It is from essential compound in living organism, and it also found in non-living such as air, water, soil and rocks. The major carbon reservoir include the atmosphere, where carbon exists as carbon dioxide, and the biosphere, which is include the plant and animal. The hydrosphere such as ocean and rivers, and lithosphere including source and fossil fuels. The carbon move between this reservoir through the natural processes like photosynthesis, respiration, decomposition and combustion. Together, this process help maintain balance the earth system. Okay, this slide show the importance of the carbon cycle in both living and non-living. For living organism, carbon form the basic structure of organic molecules such as carbohydrates, proteins, lipid and nucleic acid. These molecules are essential for energy production, growth and reproduction. Carbon also makes up the structural framework of cell and tissue, allowing living organism to function properly. For non-living system, carbon is present in the atmosphere as a carbon dioxide, where it regulates the earth climate, and it also found in water, soil, rocks and fossil fuels, supporting many natural processes. In addition, carbon play a key role in photosynthesis and other biochemical cycle that maintain balance the environment. We move into the next slide. This slide shows the major carbon storage area on Earth, also known as carbon reservoir. First, the atmosphere stores carbon mainly in the form of carbon dioxide or CO2, which is present in the air and play as an important role in regulating Earth's climate. Next, the biosphere, the carbon stores in the living organisms such as plant, animals and microorganisms. This carbon is used for growth, energy and biological processes. The hydrosphere contains carbons in ocean, river and lakes, mostly dissolved as a carbon, and ocean act as a major sink by absorbing large amount of carbon from the atmosphere. Finally, the lithosphere store the carbon in soil, rock and fossil fuel like coal, oil and natural gas. This is the largest long-term storage of carbon on Earth. So based on the next slide is it show the carbon move between the different reservoir on Earth. Carbon move from the atmosphere to living thing through the photosynthesis, where plant absorb carbon dioxide to produce food. Carbon then return to the atmosphere through the processes such as respiration, decomposition and combustion. Carbon is also exchanged between the atmosphere and ocean through the oceanic gas, allowing the ocean to absorb and release the carbon dioxide. Over the long period, carbon is stored in rocks, soils and fossil fuels through the sedimentation and burial. Finally, the carbon is released back into the atmosphere through the volcanic activity of the burning fossil fuel, completely the carbon cycle.
Hello, my name is Arif bin Azmi. We'll be talking about carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. First point is CO2 is a major greenhouse gas that traps heat and regulates Earth temperature. Second is main source. The main source are respiration, decomposition, burning fossil fuels, deforestation, and volcanoes. And third point is rising CO2 contributes to global warming, climate change, and ocean acidification. Next is photosynthesis and carbon fixation in plants and algae. Plants and algae absorb CO2 from the air or water through leaves or cells. Using sunlight and chlorophyll, they convert CO2 plus water into glucose and oxygen in a process called photosynthesis. Carbon fixation is a process of converting inorganic CO2 into organic molecules, like sugar. Stored carbon becomes plant biomass, like leaves, stem, and roots. Next is carbon transfer through food chains and food webs. First, carbon stored in plants is passed to herbivores when they eat plants. Next, carnivores get their carbon by eating herbivores or other carnivores. Next is decomposers like bacteria and fungi break down dead organisms, returning carbon to soil and air. Finally, some carbon becomes part of long-term storage like peat, fossil fuels, and sediments. Next is respiration by plants, animals, and microorganisms. Respiration is a process that releases CO2 back into the atmosphere. Both plants and animals respire, for, for the plants at night, and for microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, they respire while decomposing organic matter, which release a large amount of CO2 into the atmosphere.
Hello, I am Hafiz. So I will explain about dissolved inorganic carbon (DIC) in the ocean. So when carbon dioxide dissolved in seawater, it will react to form three distinct species, which is aqueous carbon dioxide, and aqueous carbon dioxide will be 1%, and then 10% carbonate, and finally 90% of sodium bicarbonate. And from that, ocean holds approximately 39,000 gigatons of carbon, which is 50 times more than in atmosphere. For the role of marine phytoplankton is 1% of Earth photosynthetic biomass, but even though it is only 1%, it is responsible for approximately 50% of global primary production, and which is the net primary production. Net primary production is where the carbon fixation happen, and where phytoplankton produce glucose and oxygen. And we can see the carbon fixation formula in the slide. You can see from carbon dioxide and water, where we have sunlight to trigger the fixation and becomes glucose and oxygen. And this happen in euphotic zone. And then after the glucose and oxygen is produced, the zooplankton and bacteria will fast cycle the glucose and also the oxygen. So when they fast cycle, they will produce, of course, carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide will enter the water at the surface area, and then carbon dioxide will dissolve in water. So what happen when carbon dioxide dissolve in the water? So since the carbon dioxide dissolve in water at the surface area of the ocean, which is the euphotic zone, the vertical transport mechanism will happen, where the biological pump will be the process that transport the carbon from the surface euphotic zone to the deep ocean interior. So first, there will be dead zooplankton and bacteria at the surface area of the ocean, and since they are dead, they will clump and form a marine snow form. They will form marine snow, and then this marine snow will trap the carbon dioxide and sink until the deep ocean. And this is what we call vertical transport mechanism, since it goes downwards. And then when the dead zooplankton and bacteria will bring the carbon dioxide enter the zone where under the 1,000 meter deep ocean, which is the mesopelagic. Under the mesopelagic, the zooplankton and bacteria which live in that zone will decompose the dead one. And when they decompose the dead one, which bring the carbon dioxide will dissolve in the water at the mesopelagic zone. Since mesopelagic zone is 1,000 meter deep, so carbon dioxide that dissolve in water higher than 1,000 meter deep will be trapped in the water, will dissolve in the water at least 100 years and above, and it will not escape the ocean. It will stay in the ocean, will not go to the atmosphere. So this will help a lot to the climate change, and which will be discussed later in the slide. So for the air-sea carbon dioxide exchange, we have the pressure driving exchange, which will depends on the difference in partial pressure. So the difference in partial pressure is will happen if the ocean pressure of carbon dioxide is lower than the atmosphere pressure carbon dioxide, then the ocean will sink, which is absorption will happen. The ocean will absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to the ocean when that happen. And other than that, there will be temperature. If the water is cool, will dissolve more gas, which is the carbon dioxide. And for hot water, it will dissolve less gas. So the place where they have the cold water will have the higher rate of gas exchange. And for the high latitude place, we call that polar sinking, which the cold water and dense will become dense, and the dense surface water sinks to the deep ocean. So when this happen, it will bring the carbon dioxide downwards to the ocean, since it is heavy. And for the other drivers, especially physical drivers, wind speed and surface turbulence will of course increase the rate of gas exchange.
Okay, hi. So I'm gonna present about the carbon cycle in the lithosphere. So what is a lithosphere? Lithosphere is the crust and uppermost solid mantle of the earth, and it can act as a long-term carbon reservoir. It is contain three types of sediment, which is a rock, soils, and also a sediment. And for your information, the carbon can be stored for thousand or unto millions of years. Yes. So the next slide is the carbon storage in a lithosphere, which is the carbon is mainly stored as a carbonate mineral, such as you can see on my slide. You can see is a calcite, siderite, magnesite, dolomite, and so on. So it also have an organic carbon in the soil and a fossil carbon in the sediment, so that it can store more carbon than atmosphere and biosphere combined, and it's play a key role in a climate regulation. Okay, next slide. Okay, for the third slide, which is the carbon storage in rocks. Most of the lithospheric carbon stored in the sedimentary rock, and the common carbon-rich rock such as limestone, chalk, dolomite, they also available on the lithospheric layer, and they form from the marine organisms such as shell and skeleton, and also from the precipitation of carbonate minerals. Okay, next slide. So the next slide is about the carbon storage in soil. And did you know that soil contains organic and inorganic carbon? So the source of soil carbon is like, as you can see there, the dead leaf and also dead animals. And this soil carbon can improve the soil structure, nutrient, and give nutrient availability, and also act as water retention. Okay, we go to the next slide, which is fossil fuel formation. So the fossil fuel is originated from the ancient plants, and then the final form is a comb, and the next one is the other dying organism, microorganism, which is later they will form such as oil and gas. Okay, the next slide is we're gonna present about the volcanic activity and the carbon release, which is the carbon stored deep into the Earth's mantle, as you can see on my slide, which is on the center of the Earth, and then it released through a volcanic eruption and also fumaroles. Fume, you know fume? It's like a fog, yeah. And that's where carbon dioxide emitted back to atmosphere, and it's complete a long-term carbon cycle. Next slide. So we go to our to my final part, which is the importance of lithosphere in the carbon cycle. So the first one, it can regulate a long-term atmospheric carbon dioxide. So it maintain the atmosphere carbon dioxide level. So the second one, it can balance carbon storage and also release it, which is it can support a long-term ecosystem stability. And the last one, for the human activity, mining fossil and fuel burning can disrupt balance. It's true. So by minimizing that, we can regulate Earth temperature and the stability of the carbon cycle itself. So that's all. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Arif Fadlin bin Ahmad Mazuki and my student number is 214938. So today I'm going to present about human impacts and climate change. So the first one is fossil fuel combustion. Fossil fuels such as coal, oil, natural gas are ancient carbon stores. Burning them rapidly releases carbon that was locked underground for millions of years. This adds extra CO2 into the atmosphere, disrupting the natural balance of the carbon cycle. Next, the deforestation and land use change. So, forests act as carbon sinks, absorbing CO2 via photosynthesis. Cutting down trees or converting land for agriculture reduces this absorption capacity. Soil disturbance from farming releases stored carbon back into the atmosphere. So, as for the net effect, less carbon stored and more carbon emitted. Next is effects on atmospheric CO2 levels. So for the pre-industrial CO2 level is minus 280 ppm. And as for now, for the current CO2 level is more than 420 ppm and rising. This is because human activities have accelerated the carbon flux into the atmosphere, overwhelming natural sinks such as ocean and also forests. This imbalance strengthens the greenhouse effect, trapping more heat into the environment. Next is the global warming and climate change. The temperature rise 1.1 Celsius since late 19th century. As for the impacts, it causes extreme weather events such as heat waves, floods, and also droughts. It will also melt glaciers and rise the sea levels. After that, ocean acidification from excess CO2 also harm marine ecosystems. This will cause biodiversity loss due to habitat stress. And lastly, is the carbon management and mitigation strategies. The first one, for the natural approaches, are afforestation, soil carbon enhancement, and also wetland restoration. As for the technological approaches, is carbon capture and storage, CCS, and also direct air capture. As for the energy transition, shift to renewables energy such as solar, wind, hydro, and also geothermal. After that, improve energy efficiency in transport, industry, and also buildings. Lastly, for policy and lifestyles, Paris Agreement targets carbon pricings, sustainable diets, and also reduce consumption. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.